All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our training on how and why to research chambers of commerce. My name is Rob Galbraith. I'm a senior researcher at Little Sis. I work in our state power mapping program, working with organizations, base building groups, and coalitions in several states across the country on campaigns to challenge corporate power. I'm going to be the main presenter today. My colleague Lauren Parker is joining us, and they're going to be monitoring the chat and just while I have the screen share going on, and I won't be able to see it. And so yeah, we're going to get started right now. And I guess, as we go through the presentation, feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat. And if anything super pressing comes up, we can stop the presentation and kind of like talk through your questions. But we'll also have a planned Q&A time at the end here. So yeah, I guess saying that, I'm going to let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here with you. And all right, and here we go. Thanks again so much for joining us. Again, today we're going to be talking about researching chambers of commerce. I'm really excited to be doing this today. I'm excited to have you all with me here. This is a topic that I am always, very interested in doing work in our state power mapping program. I find that frequently, no matter who I'm working with, anyone from community organization to a union, chambers of commerce are always come up in struggles against corporate power in especially at the state and local level. I guess kind of just like off the bat, I'll say that there's chambers of commerce at pretty much every sort of like level of government that you can think of, even though they're not governmental entities. But there's city chambers of commerce, sort of statewide or regional ones, as well as the larger U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Today, we're mainly going to be talking about, or we're entirely going to be talking about state and local chambers of commerce. But, a lot of what we're going to be talking about here does apply up to the national level. Although, I feel like, these state and local ones sort of get a lot less attention than the sort of like larger national scale ones, like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Federation of Independent Business, or the Business Roundtable. So just sort of by way of introduction, I am again, I'm a senior researcher at Little Sis. Little Sis is a watchdog organization specializing in campaign research for movements for justice and movements to challenge corporate power over our society and our economy. We do a few different things here at Little Sis. We're a watchdog research group focused on power research and mapping the networks and connections between powerful people and organizations. We produce a lot of original research and co-produce research with a lot of our organizational partners that we work with. But in addition to that, we do trainings like the one that you're in right now, training organizations and members of the public on the tools and methods of power research that we use in producing our original research. Also, we're a technology company. We operate a few different tools that can be used to sort of bring a lot of this research together. Our flagship site is called littlesis.org. Little Sis is the opposite of Big Brother, and the idea is that just as sort of elite power is organized and sort of watching down and surveilling all of us, the idea of Little Sis is that we are a community of activists, researchers, academics, journalists who are together looking back up at the powers that be. So LittleSys is a free open source research platform. It operates sort of like an involuntary LinkedIn for powerful people and organizations. And we use LittleSys to track relationships as people move between business and government, or even the sort of less formal social networks. Think of your sort of elite clubs and semi-formal organizations where we find elite corporate power concentrating. We also have a tool called Oligrapher, which is used to visualize data from the LittleSys database. You'll see some maps during this training that I used Oligrapher to build. And what that is for is sort of, as we do this research and as we study, elite corporate power, the networks and sort of connections between large amounts of people and organizations can become really hard to describe just verbally or sort of in writing. And Oligrapher is used to visualize those dynamics and those relationships, to create charts showing where the connections are between powerful people and organizations. So, oh boy. So just a bit of an agenda for today. I'm going to start by talking about chambers of commerce and local power. This is the sort of, what is a chamber of commerce and why are we interested in them? Then I'm going to talk through some of the resources and tools that I use at LittleSys in doing this research into chambers of commerce. And then we'll follow that up with a sort of a Q&A at the very end here. So yeah, what is a chamber of commerce? Chambers of commerce are local, state, or national level organizations where different business interests all come together in order to advocate for policies that benefit them. Chambers of commerce provide lots of services to members, like they'll have educational events about anywhere from like describing like the chamber's policy priorities to talking about how to comply with various like labor or other laws that may have changed that their members will have an interest in. They host networking events where people in the local corporate community can get together, build sort of personal connections with one another. And sometimes they provide business services like insurance or a member directory for sort of connecting businesses to one another in order to, at the end of the day, everything is oriented towards allowing local businesses to extract the most profit that they can from the local economy. I think most importantly, and what we're really focused on here today, is the way that chambers of commerce bring together regional elites in order to create a shared political agenda and then put that political agenda into action. So chambers of commerce they're a really great window into a local corporate power structure. And as I kind of go through some of the slides here, I'll talk about why I think looking at chambers of commerce is a particularly good way to start to build an understanding of who are the most important corporate players in your community, what do they care about, how do they work together, and then of course who are their allies in government, who are the people who are working with the corporate community in order to advance a corporate political agenda. So yeah, why research chambers of commerce? Again, this is how we can learn about the agenda of local corporate elites, what they perceive as the most pressing issues of the day, what they're going to be lobbying about, advocating for government. We can learn who in government is aligned with corporate power by looking at some of their lobbying relationships and their the politicians that they fund through individual donations or their political action committees. Who are the politicians showing up to the events that they have and listening to what they have to say. By researching chambers of commerce, sometimes we can find common enemies that are shared by seemingly different local campaigns. If your union, for example, is in a contract dispute with a local employer, it's very possible that employer is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, along with other corporate and business elites, or maybe the an employer that your union is in a contract dispute with, is also the target of a completely different campaign. Maybe the executives at that corporation are running a school privatization effort or something like that. And by finding these sort of shared enemies, it can help to build coalitions, build power for working people to come up against these as we see, are very well coordinated, well funded, well resourced joint corporate efforts. We can also find ties between cultural and community institutions and corporate power networks. So when you look at the board of directors of your local chamber of commerce and you see all these corporate executives on there, all of these executives frequently will have very important governance positions at local cultural institutions like art museums, the Philharmonic Orchestra, things like that, or major sort of community institutions in the nonprofit sector, like your local United Way, or other sort of elite friendly nonprofit organizations. Also, by looking at chambers of commerce, what they're advocating for, who is running the show there, sometimes we can identify points of tension within the corporate power structure that we can then sort of lean on and exploit for our campaigns. Because while all the major corporate interests in our cities and our regions do come together in formations like the chambers of commerce, they are not always in perfect alignment with one another all the time. A lot of times these businesses are in direct competition with one another, or the things that are good for one business are not as good for another one. And so by trying to see who belongs to the Chamber of Commerce, who might be in tension with one another, we can start to think about strategies we might use to sort of drive a wedge and try to fracture some of this corporate unity and corporate alignment, if we determine that it could be to our advantage in a campaign. So yeah, who rules the Chamber of Commerce? This is a chart that I wanted to kind of put right up front here, because who the Chamber of Commerce says they represent, and who they sort of talk about, or kind of, or will put in front of the camera as sort of representative of their membership, and who is actually running the show, is not always different. So especially when you get down to the local and regional level, the chambers of commerce will spend a lot of time talking about how they're there to advocate for small businesses and the sort of mom and pop shops, and the kind of fanciful American dream type narrative of somebody starting a bakery or something, and all the services that they can provide to small kind of romanticized businesses. Think about, like, whenever you see a credit card commercial, or a commercial for like a business credit card on TV, they're never talking about huge mega corporations or billionaires. They're they always will talk about a couple people who started a bead business, or a bakery or something like that. And that is because at the chambers of commerce, the real power is almost always held by a few dominant major corporate interests. And what we're looking at here is a chart of some of those interests that turn up time and again. And kind of at the top of the heap there, and really I put that at the top of this circular chart for a reason, is major regional banks. Major regional banks are really, really important in local chambers of commerce. If your local chamber of commerce does like mine does and sort of rank their funders and donors with by how much they give, you're going to notice that your big regional banks and sometimes your sort of national or even transnational banks as well are always going to be sort of at the top of the heap. Um, Gas and electric utilities are also really major players pretty much at every local chamber of commerce. Then you have large regional employers, whether that is that will really depend on what industry looks like in your area. Whether it's dominated by manufacturing or retail or probably some combination of that. Following right after that, regional hospital networks, healthcare industry, super important in the United States, yeah, and everywhere, both in terms of controlling people's employment situation and the sort of provision of a really basic necessity to have a functioning society. Following right after that, maybe something a lot less necessary is health insurance corporations. These are always I always tend to see health insurance companies on the Chamber of Commerce. Frequently, you're going to see whatever your local Blue Cross Blue Shield is, but you'll also see some of the bigger national health insurance companies too, like United Health or Cigna or something like that. Then public and private colleges, and this is starting to get into some of the I think areas that as organizers and activists we could start to play with. Frequently, again, as major employers and as institutions that are very closely connected to the corporate community, public and private educational institutions are members of chambers of commerce, and this is something where what the chamber advocates might be in sort of direct competition to the interests of, especially of a public university or college. Think one example of this might be, chambers of commerce are always lobbying to decrease taxes. They represent the interests of people who are, again, trying to extract as much profit and sort of privatize and hold and accumulate as much profit as possible by extracting it from our local economy. That sort of anti-tax agenda is in direct competition with publicly funded institutions like public colleges and universities. Next is on my list is real estate developers. This this makes sense in terms of a major locus of profit extraction, as well as control over the physical geography of our cities and towns. Finally, on here I have corporate law firms. I mean, I think you can really extend this category to basically corporate law firms, but also other sort of service providers to large corporations. So, you've got your big law firms, but also, big accounting firms, things like that. The companies that are providing business services to the rest of the corporations within the chamber. And if you look at this as a whole, you can really see here, it's all of the sort of private actors that hold a huge amount of influence over what our cities look like, what gets built, what kinds of energy we use. And you can see basically all sorts of ways of where, money and wealth is it's all of the different ways that money and wealth are sort of extracted from people, taken from people's work, and sort of privatized into these various little private buckets. And so even though chambers of commerce will often talk about how they represent the interests of small businesses, when you start to look at who the primary donors to the chambers are, and maybe even more importantly than that, who sits on like their board of directors or the executive committee of their board of directors, these are the types of corporate interests that you're going to see time and again. And as you start to investigate what a chamber of commerce's political agenda is, and what their and what they're lobbying for. It's always going to be the interests of sort of these major players, always over the interests of working people, or even the sort of small businesses that they like to talk about. So yeah, what is this Chamber of Commerce agenda? I've sort of, greatly simplified it here, and it's going to vary, from place to place. But, in general, we're talking about um, public money for private profit and sort of squeezing working people in as many ways as they can. So chambers of commerce are for tax breaks and corporate subsidies, privatizing schools and other public resources, extracting and burning fossil fuels. They're against fair wages, affordable housing, whether that's public housing or other ways of sort of using government to try to rein in housing costs. They're against public services generally, whether that is public schools or the sort of or the broader social safety net and welfare state. They're against universal health care. This is a really, really big issue, perennially, at the various chambers of commerce in New York State where I live. And more sort of most broadly of all, you can think of chambers of commerce as being for the bosses and against unions and working people. So how do chambers of commerce move their agenda? They've got a lot of I guess weapons in their arsenal here. First and foremost, lobbying. Chambers of this is, I think, probably the most obvious one. Chambers of commerce hire lobbyists in city halls and state capitals to advocate for the interests of the business community, sort of pitching those as corporate interests being representative of and a good stand-in for the interest and well-being of the city or region as a whole. Campaign donations, both through Chamber of Commerce PACs, but as well as coming directly from all the various Chamber of Commerce members and their executives and leadership. Government appointments. Very frequently, chambers of commerce are in a position to directly influence public policy by having their executives or their staff members appointed to important like economic development agencies. Very frequently, you'll find that in the laws creating various economic development agencies, the Chamber of Commerce will be granted by law the ability to appoint members of the boards of those things. Media and public relations. And this is sort of starting to get to some of the less tangible stuff, but chambers of commerce will frequently be quoted in news articles about the economy, talking about, or sort of about politics generally, talking about why various policies that are beneficial to working people are going to be a disaster that's going to cause the collapse of the city. They play this really important media role and public relations role and sort of shaping narratives and the sort of joint story we all collectively tell ourselves as a society about the way things are and how they should be. Finally, through AstroTurf. Chambers of commerce are very frequently involved in setting up sort of grassroots sounding coalitions in order to advocate for certain policies that are, in fact, just totally controlled by the corporations that run the show at the Chamber of Commerce. So yeah, how do we research chambers of commerce? First of all, I'm going to talk about web searches, and this might be a little obvious to folks on here, but this is always, in any sort of power research project, this is always a really great place to start. And with chambers of commerce, I always start with the Chamber of Commerce website. On those websites, you can find, again, who the corporate donors to the Chamber of Commerce are, and very frequently you'll see them ranked. Very sometimes, even in an incredibly obvious way, just by like how big they make their logo on their donor website. So yeah, you'll find the donors ranked by how much they give to the chamber, which is a great proxy for understanding their influence over the chamber's agenda. In general, the bigger the logo of a corporation on the Chamber of Commerce website, the more influence that corporation has over what the chamber advocates. On the chamber websites, you'll find their board members, as well as, hopefully their corporate affiliations. That's not always going to be the case, and sometimes you are going to have to do a little more digging to find out like exactly who these board members are. If all you have is like a photo of them. But again, these chamber websites are usually pretty straightforward about what their corporate affiliations are for their board members, because this is something that they're proud of. They are proud advocates for the business community, and frequently paying dues to a chamber of commerce is just a way to get more visibility for your company. On their websites, hopefully you'll be able to find information about their policy priorities. The Chamber of Commerce in Buffalo, where I live, every year will publicize their advocacy agenda and make it available on their website, with listing exactly what they're going to be working on, and sort of what their main priorities are for in terms of laws they want to pass or repeal, or regulations they're trying to kill. This can be really useful for finding out what your chamber is working on, and especially like whether it is taking a position and putting its resources to work on something that you care about. On their websites, they'll advertise events that they hold. I mentioned before, this sort of like networking is a big function of the chambers of commerce, and they will frequently put out ads for events. Sometimes these are available to be attended by the general public. Other times, especially like when they have an event with elected officials, the general public, they generally discourage the general public from coming to those events, because they don't want to have their sort of spiel interrupted by people who would prefer that elected officials work for the people instead of corporations. But you can generally find information about these events on chamber websites. Finally, you may find information about the various front groups or coalitions that the chamber has either created or is participating in. Again, these are advocacy organizations, and they rely on their websites to get out their message. And so just by looking at the chamber website, you might be able to learn about some of the different astroturf tools that the chamber is using in order to try to shape the world around their will. Next, in terms of web searches, I think it's really great to look at government websites. Like I mentioned before, chambers of commerce are frequently appointed to, and sometimes legally mandated to be on government agencies, or sort of public-private arrangements. So yeah, look at the websites for your local and regional economic development agencies, government advisory committees, the governance structures of various like special business districts, various like planning councils, things like that, because frequently you will find either executives from your local chamber of commerce, or the board members, or other people affiliated with the corporations that make up and that run the chamber of commerce. Just some general kind of tips and techniques for doing these web searches. Always be putting full phrases in quotes when you're using a search engine. The example here is like, put quotes around Chamber of Commerce in order to narrow down results to only include pages that have that whole phrase in them. Again, you might or not again. Also, a really great tip is to use the site search operator. This can be used in Google, Bing, or in any of the other, whatever, DuckDuckGo, whatever search engine that you like to use the best. By using site, and then putting in the address of a website, and then some search terms, you can search for just you can search for results only within a specific website. This can be a really great way to kind of streamline some of that research, For example, if you're looking at like your city website, you can search within that site for mentions of the Chamber of Commerce or for the names of people associated with your Chamber of Commerce to find different events they may have been at, whether they appear in any official board charts, org charts, things like that. Also, you can find old versions of websites using the Internet Archive Wayback Machine by searching for like the URL of that website within the Wayback Machine, or in Google using a cache search for a specific URL. It can be really interesting to look at previous iterations of websites. One thing I've done in the past is looking at archived versions of my local Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors page, and you can really, just by looking at previous iterations of the Board of Directors, you can see sort of ebbs and flows of influence within the corporate power structure of various businesses and companies. For example, here in Buffalo, about 10 years ago, the state government gave Elon Musk $1 billion, built $1 billion factory for Tesla that Elon Musk can get rents for $1 a year. And they were supposed to do, they're supposed to be building solar panels there, but now mainly they just use it for data analysis for their self-driving car program. Basically, I'm trying to remember exactly what the timeline is, but right after the state built this factory, Tesla shows up with a big logo as a member of the local Chamber of Commerce. This happened again recently when we had a major Washington, D.C. real estate developer started buying up buildings all throughout the city of Buffalo. And very shortly after that, he joined the Chamber of Commerce as a major donor. So by using these sort of archive searches, you can see different changes in either your Chamber of Commerce website or really any website on the internet. Then at the bottom here, I have a link to a different search operators like that cite or cache search that you can use with Google or other search engines, again, to really sort of streamline and hone your searches to make sure you are getting sort of quality, useful search results. I think this is getting more important than ever to have some of these sort of advanced tools and tricks for using search engines, as more and more of the internet sort of gets flooded with AI generated or sort of like procedurally or algorithmically generated text that can sometimes be just wrong or sort of in the most benign sense just sort of like not useful and waste your time clicking links for it. So next up, I'm going to talk about nonprofit tax filings. Pretty much every Chamber of Commerce is going to be set up as a 501c6 nonprofit corporation. That means that that it can lobby and engage in political campaigns, but donations to it are not tax deductible. Because they're all set up as nonprofits, their annual tax returns are publicly available every year. You can find, there's a lot of different resources you can use to find these Forms 990. I strongly prefer ProPublica's Nonprofit Explorer tool. They've done a great job of sort of digitizing a lot of the data, so you can search within these 990s instead of having to scroll through dozens of pages of like scanned, hand-filled out PDF files. They've also done some interesting sort of automated like data analysis showing how revenues and expenses have changed like over the years within a nonprofit organization. So the different things that are going to be most useful for researching chambers of commerce in nonprofit tax filings are their financial information. Their revenues are found in Part 8. Their expenses are found in Part 9. And you can see how much of their money they are getting from membership dues versus various paid events that they put on. You can see what they're spending their money on, sort of in a broad sense. in a few sort of like very large categories. You can find out who the board and executives of your Chamber of Commerce are. That's going to be found in Part 7, Section A. This is not going to list their sort of their other like corporate affiliations, but it will name all of their board members as well as sort of their key like highest paid employees. You can also find a Schedule D, which has more detailed compensation information, including some of the like non-cash fringe benefits that are paid to their executives. For example, my local chamber of commerce, the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, buys its president and CEO a membership to the Buffalo Club, which is an elite social club in the city of Buffalo every year, and that's part of her compensation. That information is located in Schedule D of their 990 every year. You can find out who the top contractors for the Chamber of Commerce are. This is any business that the Chamber of Commerce has paid more than $1,000 to in a given year. With some of your smaller cities or smaller regional chambers, this section may just be empty because they've just not paid anybody over more than $100,000 in a year. But in larger cities, especially where the chambers are engaged heavily in lobbying, heavily in public relations spending, or heavily in litigation, this can be a way to see who some of the firms that the chamber is paying are. Finally, on Schedule R, they have to list their related organizations, and this is how you can find out the names of the PACs or different front groups that sort of have overlapping governance with the Chamber of Commerce. Again, that's in Schedule R, which is sort of like added to the end of their tax filing every year. Next up is campaign donations. Again, so this is going to be for figuring out like who the Chamber of Commerce supports politically. Sometimes this is going to be, pretty obvious, based on a specific elected official's rhetoric or their own sort of like policy choices. But you can see by searching in your local or your state or local Board of Elections database, you can see how the Chamber of Commerce and how your corporate community more largely is channeling money into state and local politics. And so you want to use this database to search for political donations, from the chamber itself, from its political action committee, which you should be able to find the name of by looking up their 990, or sometimes it'll just be like Chamber of Commerce PAC. That's not the case with my Chamber of Commerce. They gave it a very different name. It's called the Coalition for Economic Growth. Whereas the name of the Chamber of Commerce is the Buffalo Niagara Partnership. But you can find the name. I found the name of that PAC by looking up their 990 form. You're also going to want to search for donations from the board members of the Chamber of Commerce and its executives, and then take it one step farther out. Search for campaign donations from other executives at corporate members of the Chamber of Commerce. And by doing this you're sort of creating if you use Olegrapher, you can do it sort of visually, but you're creating like a mental map of how money is flowing from the corporate community to politicians, and you'll be able to identify who are the top politicians who are get the most money from the corporate world where you live. Finally, lobbying. This researching lobbying from a Chamber of Commerce is pretty much the same as researching lobbying done by any sort of corporation or organization. Look up your state or local lobbying database. And there, by searching for the name of your Chamber of Commerce, you can find out what the chamber is lobbying on. Sometimes depending on your the laws in your state, you can find out what public officials the chamber is targeting for lobbying. You can see how much money the chamber is spending on lobbying, and you can see what lobbyists the chamber is hiring. Again, this is all for sort of building out your understanding of how the corporate world sort of is acting in concert. What are their tools and vectors for exerting influence over public policy? Excuse me one second. I'm going to take a drink here before I kind of bring it all together. So yeah, so using all of those kind of like tools and methods I just talked about, we can develop a power map of who runs the local chamber of commerce, what their local agenda is, and who they're influencing in government. This information is, I think it's very fascinating, but it's, probably not, going to be super effective on its own. I think it's really important background research to be doing, again, in order to better understand the relationships between the most powerful corporate actors where you live and how they come together and what they agree on, and sort of by elimination what they don't agree on. But generally, this type of research into chambers of commerce is going to supplement other campaign research that you're probably going to be doing. So you are probably going to want to broaden this information out by researching the power networks of the individuals and corporations whose names came up when you were researching your chamber of commerce. We don't have enough time to talk about all of that today, of course, but Little Sis does have guides for researching individuals and organizations on our website at littlesis.org/toolkit. We also, have a lot of videos online at YouTube, sort of going into some of that methodology sort of in a lot more detail, and with some, kind of like live demonstrations of how we use some of those tools. So yeah, just some, additional resources. You can sign up for our newsletter at littlesis.org/newsletter. Again, check out our YouTube channel. Lots of instructional videos on there, as well as how to use the Little Sis database itself and our other research tools. And of course, we are a small worker self-directed nonprofit organization. We put on at least one of these public trainings every month. And you can support the research that we do and support these trainings by going to public-accountability.org/donate, and you can sign up for a one-time or a recurring donation. Really, we're an extremely small crew. There's 5 of us on staff right now, and so every donation really goes a long way to helping us provide these tools, provide these resources to help lift up campaigns. Finally, you can get in touch with me at rob@littlesis.org. I really like fielding questions from people in the movement who are working on research problems and have questions. You can also follow us on Twitter at TwiddleSys, and you can see right there on the slide for the spelling of that. It is a pun on the name Little Sis, combined with the word Twitter, which I acknowledge is no longer the name of the company, but we're not changing it. So yeah, I guess saying that, we can turn it over to the chat. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. My colleague Lauren will read them off, and I'll do my best to respond to them.
So far, we don't have any questions just yet, but as Rob said, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll read them out.
And if you don't have any questions, that's also oh, here we go. I was gonna say it's also all right, but actually it's better to have questions. Ben Cartwright asks, will you have a webinar on creating a graph? Yes, we will actually. And I want to say that is our next webinar. I'm not I should have looked up the schedule for our webinars, but yes, we will have a webinar on creating a graph using Olegrapher. We also have YouTube videos available recorded on how to do that. Let's see, will we also get the links in the chat sent to us? Yes, I will make sure to do that as well. Next question is, what are your preferred visualization techniques for power mapping, especially when the parties involved and connecting issues are really complex? Yeah, that's a really great question. I guess, I work at Little Sis, so my preferred technique is using Olegrapher. One function that we have on that is the ability to sort of create slides within that to highlight different areas of maps. That can be really useful for when you're sort of documenting really complex relationships, to be able to sort of walk through each area kind of step by step. However, one thing I try to avoid when building a large power map is making what I call in my mind like a spaghetti monster, because the purpose of the tool is to make these sort of complex sets of relationships legible for people. And I find if once you get too many dots and lines on one of those things, it starts to look a little cuckoo, and I think you start to lose people, and it starts to get into sort of like corkboard and string type territory, where it actually makes the relationships less visible. Next question: are there search engines you find more helpful than others?
Hey, Rob, can I
Oh
interrupt?
yes,
Did you mention
please.
like storyboarding in Olegrapher too? Because that might help breaking up some of the complex networks.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Yeah, that's what I meant when I said you can create slides. So yeah, you can create story maps where each little kind of like page of the story will highlight a different area of the map and kind of zoom in on it and highlight the connections there. And so you can sort of like walk step by step through more complex situations, highlighting each area, then kind of like zooming out at the end and showing how it all comes together. Are there search engines you find more helpful than others? I usually use DuckDuckGo, but I don't really have strong preferences there personally. I don't know, Lauren, if you have any strong preferences. I find that Google is getting less and less useful to me, but I have not landed on something that I think is like especially great.
Same. I usually use Firefox just because it seems a little bit more has better privacy controls, but in terms of search engines, I feel like they're all about the same.
The next question is, can you walk through how LittleSys brings information into its network? Yeah, so we as a staff frequently add information on whatever we are researching, but LittleSys is a wiki style database. And so especially for, if you're talking about very specific research subjects or, research topics in, a particular city or place, that there might not be a lot in there, but the good news is that anybody can sign up for a Little Sis account. And as you do that research yourself, you can add that information so it is in Little Sis. And so you can use Little Sis to both organize it, but also to make it available for the next person that may be looking for something. Next, we have, did you take notice over who from a given corporation is on the board of a local chamber of commerce? Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's really important to pay attention to. I think, it really depends on the size of the company. But yeah, I think it's definitely like worth noting who within the company is on the Chamber of Commerce. And I would say usually it's either going to be like the CEO or somebody at like the senior vice president level or executive vice president level. And very frequently somebody involved in government relations. But usually it's somebody, in the upper management type area. Do you know of research? Oh no, I'm losing my slides here. Do you know of research on how state and local chambers of commerce are influencing climate policy, or know of people working on that? Well, I guess the first thing that pops to my mind is we have done some of that work ourselves, working with organizations and coalitions focused on climate policy in New York State, and basically what we've seen. And you can look up our report, the anti-electrification force, and I'm blanking on the name of the report we published last fall on how chambers of commerce, utility corporations, often working very closely with chambers of commerce, are working to undermine the implementation of New York's climate law that mandated carbon pollution reductions. Um, that I think is one way. Very frequently, I think you'll see, and depending state by state, this is an area where Chamber of Commerce appointments to government like advisory boards are something you're going to want to pay really close attention to. But also, through the more kind of like traditional channels, like lobbying is something that we see. Um, Sorry if I missed it earlier, but can you link to Olegrapher? Yeah, Lauren, would you be able to drop a link to Olegrapher in the chat?
Yep,
Um,
it's in
I
there.
think, oh, it's in there already. Great. Yeah, I think it's like littlesys.org slash maps, I think.
If you want to explore already created maps, you can go to littlesys.org/olegrapher. And if you want to create your own map, you can go to add and then choose map on the website.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Lauren.
Mhm.
Do you have any idea who, if anyone, tracks the economic impact individual development actually has in an area versus what they project to have? And then Jed mentions Good Jobs First as a place that may be tracking that. Yeah, Good Jobs First does a really good job of that. I think generally that question is sort of hard because the your chamber of commerce, your economic development agencies, your sort of like individual corporate subsidy recipients will put a lot of resources into sort of like economic models claiming certain job numbers. If it's a company that has received subsidies, again, this depends on where you are. They may have to do some sort of reporting back to the economic development agency about like the actual numbers. But yeah, this is something that can be very hard to determine. I think like other people who are pretty good at tracking this stuff are local, especially sort of more watchdog adversarial type news organizations. We'll probably be keeping close tabs on this, and also doing a lot of the more difficult legwork of filing public information requests. But yeah, I mean this might be an area where um, filing freedom of information requests to local economic development agencies might be a really good way to get at some of that information. Well, it looks like that seems to be the end of questions here. And so with that, I'm just gonna say, yeah, thank you again for joining us, for lending me some of your Friday afternoon. It's a beautiful day here in Buffalo, New York. I hope it's also nice where you are. Oh, we've got one more here. Uh Usually under an NDA, hoping there's some, yeah. Yeah, that can be really tough. You know, that might be a place where the information you're looking for might just not be available publicly, and you'd have to rely on uh making friends with someone on the inside who can leak you something, or maybe a super effective pro bono attorney who could try to challenge the NDA or something like that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like a lot of times this information is just sort of not forthcoming from the people that hold it, unfortunately. But yeah, yeah, I think we're going to wrap up here, but I just want to say again, if other questions sort of occur to you after we close this out, definitely feel free to email me at rob@littlesis.org. You can join Little Sis to make an account to start adding to the database. You can use the database without creating an account, but if you create an account, you can add to it. You can create maps using Olographer. Yeah, be sure to sign up for our newsletter. That way you will you'll be kept abreast of our future training opportunities that are coming up, including our Olographer training, which yeah, we do have one of those a live training planned shortly. And but in the meantime, you can check out our YouTube channel where we've got videos on them. Thanks so much, everybody, and yeah, enjoy your weekends. I hope you all have a great Saturday and Sunday, and we'll see you next time. Bye.